If you're a throwing athlete, like a quarterback, a baseball player, softball player, even javelin or disc, you're going to want to watch today's show to learn some training principles to maximize your performance. Hey, everybody, welcome to EliteAthletesTV.com. I'm Mike Pulaski, former 11-year pro quarterback and quarterbacks coach here at EliteAthletesTV.com. Throwing athletes and rotational athletes are unique in the fact that they become so one-sided. And so you have to do something within your training regimen to create symmetry or balance in your body. Today, we're talking to one of the best human performance trainers that I've ever met, former teammate of mine and our human performance coach here at EliteAthletesTV.com, Ethan Banning. Really good about what he does, has worked with a ton of super high-level athletes, including Olympians, pros, and college athletes across the board. But we're going to talk about what throwing athletes need to do in terms of their training framework to create that symmetry. Before we get started, make sure if you haven't done it yet that you subscribe to the channel, ring that bell, get notified every time we have new stuff coming out. Give me a thumbs up, hit that like button down below, and leave me a comment. We would love to hear from you. If you ask some good questions, we'll probably make you a video. Now, like I said, the other day I had a chance to talk to Coach Banning about human performance. He's one of the best in the business, and we were talking about throwers. Talk to me about how you train guys that are throwing the ball and what you're doing for them in the weight room, kind of in performance training.
Well, I think there's a number of things that we need to consider. I kind of say in jest at times, I'm like, well, everybody wants their thrower to have a healthy shoulder. And I'm like, well, you don't want your strong safety to have a bad shoulder either.
Right.
You don't want your basketball guy to have a bad shoulder, even though they don't throw, so like a strong safety takes as much trauma to their shoulder as any overhead throwing athlete does. So there's, that throwing athlete got a lot of special care. And I think there are some special things that we want to make sure we take into consideration with them, such as there's no real reason, because when you look at a thrower and they've got like an arm slot, and everybody's got a little bit different slot. And I know that some of the new things, or maybe not new, but some of the things that like Patrick Mahomes does very well is find different arm slots. Tony Romo was famous for this, finding the open hole, because Tony wasn't a super tall guy, but he was really good at finding, space to throw the ball in. Well, that being said, his right arm is going to have a very different groove that it likes to press in, as an example. So when we're doing pressing movements like a bench press or a dumbbell bench press, I'm going to avoid using a bar with any of my overhead throwers, because one arm is going to want to be in this arm slot. One arm might be in this arm slot, if you can see me here. And so now if I lock them both together, neither one of them is in the ideal place for that shoulder, which is one of the most, if not the most complex joints in our body. There are 4 joints in and around the shoulder. There's a lot of different structures there moving. And your lat, I'm sure, on your right side is bigger than your lat on your left side. Just historically, you've thrown so many footballs and baseballs over the years. That's just the way it is. And so that being the case, you're going to lock in and tie into the bench, and physiologically different on your right side than your left. So the number one thing I would say is I spend a lot of time with exercises like push-ups or floor pressing, dumbbell work, dumbbell incline work, lots of things like that. But we avoid things like locking into a bar, whether it be horizontally or vertically, with a throwing athlete. The other thing, and this is important for me, no matter what sport, athlete, whatever it is, we work with a lot of baseball. So, a lot of throwing athletes, it's imperative that we have a strong back. Like our back muscles, our posterior chain, it gets talked about. A lot of people don't know what it is. Basically, the muscles on the back of the body must be developed to be a better athlete, but to be a healthier thrower, so that you can reduce the risk of shoulder and elbow injuries, making sure that we have back exercises done, such as dumbbell rowing, cable rowing, inverted rowing on a bar or some sort of strap, TRX strap. Those movements must happen, in my opinion, for an athlete every single time they set foot in a weight room, to the point where we're doing 1.5 times as many rows as we are presses. and that's in the horizontal pattern. And then in the vertical pattern, I think it's important that overhead throwers do some vertical pressing. Now, a lateral raise in my program is a vertical press. So some people have, discomfort. I think a dumbbell single arm press is perfectly safe, but some people don't feel comfortable doing it. That's fine. A lateral raise will be fine for it. But 2 times as many vertical pulls as we do vertical presses. We want to create that symmetry in the body. And the back is the biggest muscle group in the upper body. So we want to make sure it's really developed so that it pulls the upper arm or the humerus into the proper position into the joint space or the glenohumeral cavity. And we do that by appropriate posture. And we want to develop that tall posture. You see Tom Brady, we mentioned him earlier, standing in the pocket. He's tall. He's got great vision, but it also allows him to scap load, which helps create velocity. In that scouting report we referenced earlier, he doesn't have a strong enough arm, they said about it. Well,
right.
You got a strong enough arm to win 7 Super Bowls. Yeah. I'm like, well, maybe, but he's figured out in his 40s how to spin it well enough to drive the ball pretty well.
Yeah.
And, some critical components, though, I think taking away, things that are going to lock your shoulders into doing the exact same thing when they're not the same parts, they're independent suspension systems, and then making sure we have a big, strong back. Really
critical.
A
huge part of the stuff that you were talking to me about, obviously, was getting equilibrium. So many right-handed throws for me, right? Driving off that right hip with the glute, and catching on that front. Like quarterbacks, we're a one-sided athlete. Period. As we're throwing, we're a one-sided athlete. We're turning, we're rotating, and getting all those reciprocal movements so that we create that balance and that symmetry in the athlete. That's just a huge one for me. I've had the backs, the neck, all that stuff from the rotational function of it, but the one-sided function of it that I had to straighten out with your help.
Well, and that's where we implement. So with all of our rotary athletes, which to me, a thrower is a rotary athlete, right? We spend a lot of time doing like rotary med ball work or anti-rotational exercises too. But like, as an example, we're doing a med ball rotary throw at a wall. I'll do twice as many throws on the non-dominant side as I do on the dominant side, especially for baseball hitter or thrower. And then, let's talk about quarterbacks, though. One of the things I love about quarterbacks is they're all fantastic athletes. And they're fantastic athletes because they're so competitive. And
You're just saying that to butter me up, aren't you?
Well, a little, but they're so competitive, so they refuse to be bad at things. And so then they've got to compete no matter what they do. I mean, Mike, you and I have laughed for years about this, but if we drive somewhere together, I'll be damned if you're not going to be the first person to get to the door of the building. You know what I mean? Right. It's just every good quarterback I've ever been around, that's how they're wired. So they're really good at doing things that are unusual. And I'll give you an example. I coached Derek Anderson for a long time. Now, Derek was an all-pro in Cleveland, played in, Arizona, he played in Carolina and in Buffalo. He was in Oregon State. He's a Pac-10 guy. I know Derek.
No, I've called several of his games. Yeah.
Well, so, the thing with DA, because I was a thrower too, I was a pitcher. And in baseball, I could throw, I could throw it pretty good. So I always, and you remember this, when we played together, I threw with the quarterbacks every day, every single day. I was the lineman that threw with the quarterbacks. It was just my thing.
You can spin it too, boy. You can spin it for a lefty.
Passion for that. Well, so, and this, you play games when you play catch. DA and I would stand 20 yards apart and hit each other directly in the chest or right shoulder, left shoulder, nose, ear, hip, hand out here, just to see who could do that better. Well, the thing that we got to with DA was, it's like, all right, bud, you're going to have to take some drops left-sided. You're going to have to do some, he can spin it left-handed a little bit.
That's a skill.
Right. So, well, here's what I tell you though, where I'm going with this, quarterbacks should be good enough athletes. And in my opinion, every quarterback with whom I've worked is a good enough athlete. If we worked on it very long, they can spin it a little bit opposite handed. Maybe not really well, but I love the thought of because when you think about how many drops have you taken in your life? A number, Million?
I did the math. I've thrown over 1 million passes in my life.
Okay, so you've taken more drops than that, then
Right.
probably would be right.
Just drops
So
on the
they've
line
all,
alone, add another couple
yeah,
100,000.
right. So you've taken, all these drops where you're pushing off with one leg and you're posting up on the other leg, and there's no symmetry. Well, we would just start taking, I was like, all right, well, we're going to do banded work to take drops the other way. And so that you can protect. I mean, your left knee is the one that's going to get hit all the time. I bet your left knee is the one that's been replaced. I don't
That's the
even know.
replacement.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, it's the one that takes all the abuse, right? So we got to get that musculature stronger. That right hip, you're going to do lots of hip extensions around your right hip. Well, as a quarterback, the better you get at quarterback play, the slower you become, right? It's this natural progression of things because all you do is rotate around the right hip, right hip, right hip. So we wanted to make sure and develop a more balanced and symmetrical. I think you used the term equilibrium, and I like symmetry, but
I think I
a
use both,
symmetrical athlete.
but interchangeable for me because I'm not the scientist. Therefore, as a Luddite layman, I can say whatever I want.
That's right. So, but you get the idea, and I know firsthand those the quarterbacks with whom you work and the ones that you've played with and coached over the years, they have a very high athletic IQ. But I think if we get what we inspect, not what we expect. So if I on a consistent basis ask you to take drops on your left side, you're going to get better at it. It's never going to be as pretty as the other side, but the point of it is to create that symmetry so that you can move equally and be able to escape the pocket and be able to go both directions out of the pocket and be able to avoid pass rushes and things of that nature. There's more to playing a quarterback position than just being able to spin it. Like you said, I can spin it a little bit. I can't. There's no damn way I can play quarterback.
Well, one of the things I love about EB is he does not pull any punches. Gets straight to the point and tells you what you need to hear, whether you want it or not. So remember, throwers, find a way to create symmetry. There's plenty of opportunity, and create that framework within your performance training to create balance in your body. Make sure, if you haven't done it, you subscribe and ring that bell. That way you get notified every time we have new stuff coming out. Give us a thumbs up, hit that like button down below, and leave us a comment. We would love to hear from you. Appreciate you watching. Wanted to help you with your human performance training, help you with your sports performance, and see if we can make you a better athlete. Hopefully, help you become the athlete of your dreams.